Welcome back to World 1-1 Podcast, everybody. I am your host for the day, the Nordic Beast, Larry. I'm here with the Nestle Wonderball Magic Head himself, Eddie V.
My body is filled with Cocoa Puffs, and after this, I'm going to go get cheeseburgers again.
Yeah, see, you're filling yourself with chocolate. You were literally heading down the path to becoming a
And the sad thing about it is that it's getting close to Valentine's, and then it'll be Easter.
We're going to find you in the clearance aisle at the candy section.
Hey.
And with us, our special guest, Danny Goffin of Jumpsuit Entertainment, creators of She Remembered Caterpillars.
Yes. Hi. Hello. How's everyone?
Oh, this is awesome.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you with us.
Awesome.
It's good to have these developer interviews. I like these. Hearing the behind the scenes and everything. So, Daniel, introduce yourself of how you got into games and probably where you started at with this game.
Okay. That's a good. It could be a long story. I don't know. I should say probably that for one thing, I never really considered myself to be the person that would say. I always wanted to make games. I was never. I'm not the one that knew this when I was 5 and whatever played on a console by a friend in a friend's house or whatever. But on the other hand, I distinctly remember tinkering with games for quite a long while. I think the first one was a game for Macs, because that's what I've always had, and it was called Escape Velocity by Ambrosia. And I played the game and I thought, like, how does this thing work? And I opened up the app basically and looked inside and saw a lot of hex strings and of course the sprite sheets, and I was always the one that was drawing and making illustrations and things, so I was like, oh, let's see what happens when I change the sprite sheets. So I never understood how the animations worked back then, but changing the interface was something that was a very immediate and interesting effect, so I changed it from a very metal framed computer screens interface to something that was closer to Matrix style, like very LED thingy. I don't know. That was one of the first things that I remember with games, and it's always been on and off something or other, and but never really started until 2012.
Wow. I mean, were you doing a lot of PC gaming as a kid during that time?
Not really. As I said, I've always had my family always had Macs, and I would get like hand down Mac from my father's. Like, you know, it started basically in, I don't know, 1996 or something.
Oh.
And so, you know, it's still a bit like it was back then today, but you know, today it's like, okay, most of the you can play a lot of games on Mac.
Yes.
And especially nowadays with Unity, and you know, it's easy to put out your game for Mac, and you don't really have to worry about it not working. I mean, it happens, but it's not as difficult as it was to port a game. But in the late 90s and beginning of the 2000s, you'd be hard pressed to find a good game. Like basically Blizzard were one of the very few AAA companies that would simultaneously release a game on Mac and PC.
Yes.
And on Mac you'd get like these very, very old crappy games. So PC gaming, yes, a bit, but it was mostly with, you know, LAN parties with friends, and their family would have like all the fancy PCs, and then they'd have like one machine that wasn't it was basically all the leftover scraps from like almost like the discarded parts, the old parts, and then me and my brother, we would play on that one, and we'd play, I don't know, Counter-Strike and Diablo 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was like I could never play these games at home, so it was always a bit distant. But so as I said, like during university, I never studied games. I studied comics and illustration. And when you look at the ones that I've worked on in the past few years, so Symmetrain and She Remembered Caterpillars, it's very obvious. It's a very distinct illustration comic style. It's so that's quite visible there, and I've done similar things earlier on, but none of these were released to the public.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the art style, because I was looking at the game, and I believe your art style has never been done in any kind of video games that I've ever saw. You know, you have sprite based, you have like kind of a little bit clean 2D drawings, but the art style in She Remembers Caterpillars is so detailed that only thing I could probably think of is a Boy in This Blob remake that came out on Wii. It kind of have that art style, but like your art style to me is kind of the first one. So I kind of call it like, I want to say it's very historical, because I believe this is like the first art style that I don't know how to define it. Like I know it's hand drawn, but I don't know like how to describe it in a certain way. But I think, of course, it's completely beautiful. I just feel like it's never been done. And I really like that about this game. Just like it feels original and fresh in its art style.
Sorry.
Well, to me,
Miss-swallowed. Sorry.
Yeah, it aesthetically to me, I sat there and I looked and I went, this is kind of like if Behemoth did something in a serious fashion. It has that bold outline, that very, very vibrant color pop, well-defined aesthetically, easy to understand, easy to digest.
Yeah. I mean, because it has a 70s vibe. Like, first of all, no reason the Beatles animation came to mind, but I'm just like, no. Okay. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, it's interesting. I have lots of inspirations or that basically, it's kind of like I look at a lot of things and kind of study them a bit closer, and some I just look at once, and I collect them usually nowadays in little Tumblr blocks, and it's they all end up, I don't know, they're basically, my head is like a little mixer, like a blender, and it's looking like a lot of things, and then breathing out again, you have these illustrations. And of course there's things that have stayed with me longer than others, so it's been compared a lot to a French kind of illustration style like Mebius comics, or maybe also inspiration of Hergé Tintin comics, but especially the beginning, it feels not, and that's important, or not important, but it is inspired a bit by the Studio Ghibli movie, Nausicaa, Valley of the Winds.
Yes. Okay, I love you, Daniel. You're my number one interview.
And there's a lot of that. There's the sort of organic city zone, that's the second act of She Remembered Caterpillars, is more something that I feel close to in terms of drawing buildings and interest in architecture, and so sort of just things grew together organically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. Okay, there we go ahead. Because I had to mention the artwork, because the artwork is just so beautiful. It's just, and now that you said Studio Ghibli, I'm like, oh my goodness, I envision it now. Nausicaa is one of the Studio Ghibli movies I like. Cause Spirited Away just knocked it out. And when you see that movie in motion, Spirited Away is so clean. And I was just watching it actually last month, and I was just like, I love animation like this.
Yeah. Animation's a big inspiration for me, and when I want to make visuals for games, mm-hmm. It usually is inspired not so much by other games, but I'm looking at things that are not games. I'm looking at fine art, sculptures. I'm looking at architecture, photography, and in my spare time, like when I'm not working in the evening, either I'm watching movies with my wife or I'm reading books. I tend to read quite a lot, maybe like 15 books a year, which is
goodness.
And it's like another major inspiration for me. The things that I find it so fascinating, the things that happen in my head just by reading text, that is such an amazing power books have, that I am frequently humbled sort of by that amazing power of text, that I think drawing an image mm-hmm. is such a blunt thing. It is not, in a way, because, an image that shows you something that you maybe haven't ever seen in that way can create quite the same feeling of awe and inspiration. Yeah. But of course, drawing is for me a bit like writing. I'm good at it. I feel confident with it, and I'm not so good with writing. I'm not a person that considers itself a writer. Mm-hmm. I don't consider myself very good with stories, and so of course whenever I read something that puts words together, someone that's written a story that I can't follow, I'm like, wow, how is this possible?
Well, sometimes some games now that you don't really understand the narrative, you could tell mm-hmm. the story through its art style, and you could just let things flow, like Hyper Light Drifter. There's just something about it that you probably don't understand the narrative, but if you look at the animation that's playing mm-hmm. along and everything, you could get a glimpse of what the story is about. So sometimes, you might not be a writer or anything, but your artwork still could tell the story, and it could give the player what that story is about.
Yeah, that's, since you're mentioning it, we tried something with She Remembered Caterpillars that is, I feel, not very common with games. I mean, you mentioned Hyper Light Drifter and a feeling of possibly not understanding the story, or maybe being able to understand the story mm-hmm. in terms of combination with the images. So I had, while we were working on this, it was like sometimes in games I get the feeling as sort of that, okay, the game wants to give you a feeling of agency in, there's a story you're playing and you're maybe the hero, and at the end you have fulfilled the prophecy because you are supposed to be the hero and you're supposed to fight the big evil bad guy. So I thought, well, it'd be great if we're doing something different there. And our writer Cassandra Kaw, she is from Malaysia, and so she has quite a different background to telling stories. And I thought we together we came toward a story that, well, on one hand, you're sort of playing through the story, but you don't really have an agency in it because it's something that's out of your hands. It is out of the hands of the person that you're following along in the story. You're sort of like a witness, but you don't really have very much power in terms of changing what has happened. It is a story about a scientist who tries to save her father from a degenerative disease. And she's trying to cope with it. She's trying to save him by creating a medicine. And that is essentially what you're playing. You're playing the medicine that is in his head. But it's like a medicine that is working. It's not like a remote-controlled robot. When you swallow penicillin or whatever, it goes to the places where, or basically it goes to a certain place in your body because that's where it's transported based on what it is, and then it reacts with other molecules, but it's not remote controlled. In terms, there's no one sitting there and controlling it. And so that's why there's, in this game, sometimes a feeling of that it's not really gelling, it's not really fitting together perfectly. And all this is kind of intentional. It's supposed to be edgy, and not edgy in the term of gritty, but in terms of something that maybe you stumble over, or something that makes you stop and say, what is this? What is happening here? So that's something that just came to my mind when you mentioned story and in relationship to the images, because we're not illustrating exactly what you're reading. It's something that, makes comics so interesting, because you have an image and you have text, and the combination of text and image, even though text and image are not necessarily related, create the bigger picture or the more interesting whole than what either could achieve alone. And that was sort of an inspiration to what we wanted to try.
Adrian, left us some questions here because he's the one that's been playing for review for us. I've also been playing through it, as time allows.
Yeah.
Oh, hush you. But in any case, I was, and he was too. Where did the idea come from? And to expound on that, was this something that was initially narrative driven and there was a gameplay concept that came behind it, or was this something the other way around where maybe you had just an artistic vision or a game idea in mind, and a story was built around it, or did this somehow all come together in some beautiful serendipitous, harmony?
It sometimes didn't feel like harmony, and sometimes it did. But I think that's game development in general. There's a lot of hard work and fighting. The game started. It's basically the first idea was just simple mechanic based. The game developer that is helping me, or basically programmed everything, and he's also the game designer, David Prima. I got to know him in late 2013. He was introduced to me by mutual friends, and he had this idea about a game where you could mix colors. And the visuals were just not very, very interesting. So we decided to work together and went on quite a long journey, because I mean it's 2017 now, and in between starting to work on the aesthetic and everything, we're also looking for someone to write a story for the game, and it happened through our publisher, Isbert Games, that we got to know Cassandra, because she's also working for that publisher as a PR person and business development. And because we were like, we want some kind of story, and it will make the game feel more whole, or at least that's what I felt like. And so I asked her, well, do you know someone that can write a story? And she went like, can I try? Like, yeah, sure, I trust you. And she writes short stories and she writes books. She's published a lot of short stories, and she's published 2 books already. And I love all of those. She's an amazing writer. And so I thought, well, this would be great to have her on board. And she pitched a few ideas, and that idea about resurrection, or maybe trying to bring someone back to life, kind of stuck. And it grew organically from there. Like, we have a high-level design document, mostly concerning the mechanics, but we've never really established something in terms of, this is how the game will look at the start, and this is how it will look in the middle, and this is how it looks at the end, and this is what is supposed to happen with the story together. It was a lot of back and forth and testing what fits together, and Cassandra had written a big part of the story, and it was mostly done. And then while we were working on the game, her father died. And so she ended up rewriting the story quite a bit in almost autobiographical way, and at least it's a reflection on what she had to deal with emotionally during that time. That very much influenced the story, but there were other things, like we quickly found out that we can only fit a very limited quantity of text in the game. We didn't want it to feel like a text-based game that is filled with puzzles, and we were a bit inspired by an approach like Monument Valley that leaves a lot of options or open ends for thought. It's something that I quite enjoy. If there's like gaps in between where I can fill in my own thoughts and ideas of what the story tries to tell me. Mm-hmm. It kind of honors my ability as a human to think. Like, I don't like to be spoon-fed everything. Like, yeah, okay, I get it. Thanks. I rather like the gaps where it's like, I don't get this, or what has happened, and then that drives my imagination. That honors my ability to think. Just like I said.
Because it feels like it opens up options on what could have been in that gap. Like, you don't have a complete explanation, just an automatic explanation. Your mind is able to wander, like, okay, maybe this had happened, and then this is part of the story, or this may have happened, and this is the story. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting thing, and it seems to work quite well whenever we've watched someone play the game on Twitch or even YouTube, even just the demo. People were like, well, what is happening here? What is this? And what is this story about? And a lot of the interpretations are pretty close to what we think that the story is about, or what the story is supposed to be about. But sometimes the interpretations go a bit into a different direction, and that's what I like. It's like, this is what, for me, doing something artistic, maybe in general terms of, sound, music, story, is about. It's not like spoon feeding. It's not about telling you this is this, and I don't know, drawing a tree and then writing tree under it. This is boring. This is not what makes us interesting, or what creates an interesting story or an interesting image. And that's why we like all the fine art masters, because there's more to the image than just the plain illustrated sense of there's a ship in the water or something.
I just want to jump in real quick and say, on the note of, leaving some things to the imagination and not spoon feeding, thank you for being somebody that does not treat your playing audience like an idiot. That is one of the biggest things for me. I love that fact that you did that. That, here's a premise, and I trust that you were intelligent enough to understand it and leave it at that. That's fantastic to me.
Well, sometimes the problem is that definitely for some of us Americans here, comprehension and games varies on the player. Because there are some people who don't play games like She Remember Calipers. Like, they'll play something like Grand Theft Auto or Final Fantasy, and they want everything given to them and broken down. Where if they go ahead.
No, it's just that. I mean, for me, that is perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. When we started working on the game, David had his basically already knew sort of what he wanted to do, and we've made a lot of decisions that made sure that this is a niche game. The story is not a standard monomyth story with the hero in the middle that overcomes a big obstacle. The game design, the way the levels progress, it's not like linear. David said, looked at what he could do with the mechanic and how he could develop it by adding another variation on top. It's like, okay, we have the variation with, let's say, the things that remove color from your character. And he'd explore that mechanic to the extent where he had the impression that's about everything that is worthwhile with this mechanic. So that's why sometimes you'll have an act with 4 chapters, and then after that there's an act with 7 chapters, because sometimes one mechanic would yield more results than the others. So we think like, we're not going to add fluff. We're not going to add 5 more levels just to stretch the thing along and make it, bigger. It's not. We didn't want to bloat it. And I had similar decisions where I said, like, I don't want the standard visual progression that you find in so many games. Like, you start in some kind of forest rural area. Okay, you do that in that game too. But usually from the forest, you go to the valleys with sweeping hills, and then you come to the villages, and then you come to the big city, and then you go underground where there's lava, and it's so cliche, and I wanted to avoid that. And it's a story a lot about memories and sort of dream state where, when you wake up in the morning and you think, wow, this made so much sense when I dreamt it, but when I think back on what I can remember, it feels so stapled together. Like there's this one scene, and then you try to retell it, and then it's like, and then I was there, and then I was there, and you were like, how do these scenes fit together? They don't really do that, and all these. So that's why you start in a forest, but then suddenly you're high up in the air above skyscrapers, and from these skyscrapers you go into a sort of Art Nouveau crystal palace. That's the sort of feeling that I wanted to create through the images, something that feels like a dream, maybe a bit.
If I could attempt to maybe kind of put a finer point on it, it's almost like when you're dreaming and you're in a dream sequence, you're in one place, you're suddenly in another. You don't know how you got there, but you feel like you definitely traveled there. You just can't remember the bridge from one to the other.
Yeah, and it feels natural. That's sort of what our aim was. We're like, let's fit together things that if you were to look at them separately, they might not feel like you should mix them. But once you do, and you do it with intention and skill, it fits together. And maybe there are some gaps, but even these gaps are intentional and are wanted. Or sometimes things, in art, when you're painting something with just oil paint, sometimes some things happen that you don't want it. You never wanted them to be there on that painting. It's just, a paint drip, and it's what you call a happy accident. But that happy accident creates something that makes the whole thing so much better. And we tried to have these moments, these happy accidents. We had that unhappy accident with Cassandra's father dying, something that none of us asked for, but it could be argued that it happened, and we used the momentum it gave Cassandra and us to create something that felt honest for all of us.
That is kind of almost like I don't know if you heard the game That Cancer Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, That Dragon Cancer. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
Never don't give me that look. Where the father created a game, for about with his son's death and everything like that. I read it in Wired, and just. He was just talking about what he went through with his son and how that inspired him to make the game that he made, and how people who played it, really couldn't finish the game because it was so emotionally impactful. And even though like She Remember Caterpillars is a puzzle game, it feels like the story moments, it still has an emotional thing if you read it. And I guess when you sometimes comprehend part of the text in it, you would kind of visualize that, wow, like it's just not a story, but there's something deeper to this. Like the meaning to the story is deeper. Like the puzzles are good, the puzzles are there, but this text and this story that is trying to showcase is like it's really deeper, and you can see the inspiration that came from the writer and from you guys.
It's let's say I just maybe goes back to what I feel like I want to be treated like or the things I look for, mm-hmm. that I like to consume. I don't like to be treated like an idiot. And although I must say, like, some of the games I play, for example, I love Borderlands and Borderlands 2, and it's something that it likes a blunt humor, and it's very comic style in terms of the way the narrative develops and how the characters are, and I like that too. I can enjoy it. It's like I like superhero movies, and I'm like, but I also like going to a museum and looking at weird sculptures that tickle some other part of my brain that is not tickled by superheroes.
Like you enjoy the creativity that is that you're seeing, and sometimes you might wonder, where did this person get this creativity? Because it could be something that's completely bonkers, something real crazy and weird, but you could take a moment back and just be like, I kind of want to know where this person came from, because it's a weird concept, but it's kind of cool, and it spells originality.
Yeah.
To that note, just, in terms of thinking of it artistically, She Remembered Caterpillar strikes me as something that's very abstract and yet cohesive at the same time, and those aren't two things you necessarily get together very often.
Now, it's it happened a lot of these things happened by chance, sort of, and was just, I said, sometimes these things, it's a it was quite a collaborative, organic development. We had a development plan, we had a production schedule, and but the game originally was supposed to come out, I think, maybe a year earlier, but things happened that delayed the game. I mean, it happens with AAA just as much, and just keep on going, and at some point you will reach that release, and I think some of these we just have to they were kind of like detours, but the detours helped us understand better what we were doing there.
Yeah, and even in indie games, there's delays. And for a lot of us,
of course.
And for a lot of us, I think we have come to the point where there's a delay. It's a delay. It's expected, or not everything now is going to be day one with the release date. Look at Final Fantasy, that got pushed. Zelda's Breath of the Wild, that's been pushed. Rhyme, that that had a problem, but it was still in development. Like, there's like delays we expect to happen, whether it's good or bad, because you want to release the product in a better state than what it already is. Especially when us as like gamers, I tend to hate patches. I hate day one patches, because definitely with Xbox One and PS4, I already got to spend close to an hour to install your game. Now I got to wait almost another 45 minutes to get your 1 day patch. And it's just like, like, you had 7 delays of this game. Why are you still patching this? Like, this should be out the box, ready to go.
Yeah, I think, in between, especially with consoles, as far as I understand, the process of releasing something and then patching it, it takes quite a bit of time. It's like, with Steam or even itch.io or whatever, it's quite easy. You have like you submit the game, and there's a review process for a playable state of the game, basically. And then after that, you can just patch the game, and very, very quickly, like several times a day. And you can't do that on consoles. So publishers on consoles, they have to decide, okay, this is our gold master. Now we're going to push it out into the public. And that all is a big orchestra of PR and everything. So they're very slow. They're like, big behemoths, and like they raise one foot and then it's boom, okay, and then they're like, okay, this is our goal, and it's like, boom, they're there, and then it's like, yeah, but the coders and everyone's like, okay, here's something we know is not working, but we'll have to push it out on day one because the process is so slow. And with a smaller game on Steam, you can like, oh, something is not working, okay, we'll fix it, or we'll try to fix it, and it's like another half an hour and it can be fixed. So it can be very quick, and it can be detrimental as well. Sometimes, you try to fix something and you break something else. So we had similar things. We released the game, and then someone was like, well, did you realize that one of your levels can be solved with 4 steps? And we're like, wow, what? This isn't supposed to be like that. And we were like, okay, we need to fix this. And then something else came up, and then something else came up. And so, you can test a lot of things, but there's no stress test like release when suddenly the game is in a lot of more hands than it ever was before. And that's when sometimes a lot of bad things happen at the same time, and you have your coders staying up all night trying to fix things. And but yeah, it's good to release something that works and have something that works well, because of course it's positive, it gets you better reviews than having something that's completely broken, like that Batman game, for example.
We will not talk about that.
Well, speaking of broken stuff, and I know you guys released on Steam at a beautiful price point of $12.99, which is more than fair for the content provided here. Absolutely fantastic. But that being said, Steam's just announced to touch on some contemporary news here. Steam's just announced that they're doing away with the Greenlight program and replacing it with something in order to hopefully enforce some better quality control standards, where potentially a developer or publisher has to front X amount of dollars to get their game onto the store that can then be recouped to help prevent this massive influx of garbage that happened on Steam in the last year or two.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious as to as someone who's released on Steam, how you feel about that, and would something like that have been a hindrance or potentially a showstopper for you guys getting out on Steam?
Well, it wouldn't have been a showstopper for us because we have a publisher. So and we have a good one. They help us a lot. They've helped us a lot, especially financially, or in that point, they have helped us a lot. But in regard to that hurdle, be it Greenlight or Steam Direct, I think that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
I don't think it will change anything. I mean, look at the App Store for iOS. In order to develop a game or anything for iOS, you have to have a developer account, and that's about $100 a year. And that hasn't stopped anyone from publishing a lot of crap. And I mean, hundreds of apps come out each day for iOS. And Steam is basically, you can buy software there that is not games, but basically Steam is only known for games to most people. And adding a monetary hurdle instead of one that's public vote, I don't think it will change much.
I think it will because of and I was just watching this show called The Know. They was talking about it,
yeah.
and they were just like, they was going year by year on how many games ended up on Steam Greenlight. So like, I guess the first year they started, it was like 100 games. And by the time it got to like 2017, it was like over 4,000 games. And a lot of people who were putting stuff on Steam Greenlight were, one of the big problems was the asset flip. So they was buying assets and then just throwing it together and then throwing on Steam Greenlight and want people to buy it. And what Steam Greenlight was supposed to be doing is that even if they buy the game, that developer is supposed to use that money to fix the game and make it better. And the one developer who was suing Jim Sterling, that just went out. They had to close the doors. You know, they were asset flipping, and they were using like different names to put almost the same games over. So they was like kind of asset flipping, and there's even like trailers of games that's not even supposed to be on Steam Greenlight. So I think
well, the thing is, you know, the people that make money with that kind of stuff, you know, it's what their approach is basically quantity over quality. It's just like if they're making money, and if Steam or Valve is offering to recoup the cost through selling your product, the thing is it may change things in terms of like who has access to Steam, because you know, some people don't have money at all, but you could still try Greenlight and maybe have something that's interesting and be voted into Steam. And now maybe you don't have, you know, you had to use open source software, and you had to use maybe whatever you could do yourself. So maybe the game wasn't visually or in terms of sound or whatever all the best it could be if you were more skillful, but in the end, Greenlight was a very small hurdle, and maybe you could publish some interesting things. And now if you don't have money at all, there's no way you will get into Steam. But I think it will not change much in terms of quality. I think there's a lot of people that they're like, oh, well, then I'll just save, or then there'll be maybe publishers that are like, well, we will pay that for you, and then basically the contract you're signing is, well, they will keep the money that they fronted through recouping, and maybe keep even another bigger chunk of the revenue share, and then you're still on there, or people put crappy stuff onto Steam still. I think it's, you know, the amount of games that is on Steam and the increase in games it has become more popular. Making games has become more popular, and more people are doing it, and it's not only the ease of entry into Steam.
But I think it's going to force the developers that they can't cookie cut now. You can't copy and paste and throw a game together. Like, you just can't throw it together and the frame rate is only 15 frames per second. Like, all that stuff, I feel like you said, quality over quantity, like that stuff has got to get cut out. And if they're going to go through publishers are not going to give them, if they give them some money and this is what they're going to give them, the publishers are not going to deal with them no more. You know, hopefully the publishers will take the loss, but they'll be like, we're not going to put this game. There's no way that you could say, oh, I made a game within 2 months and I'm ready to release it. You know, and hopefully the Steam Direct, that they do put out some good games. Like okay, if your game is a Contra style game, if it plays good and you still working on it because you want to make it better, and the publisher sees that and believes in that product, then those publishers are going to hold those developers to a contract. And if they mess that contract up, it's going to be a big, probably court case financial mess.
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt that. I don't know. There might be people that are just putting out crap and let's try if someone votes this through green light and green light was like basically in the end, or now it's like, you just wait and then it gets green light anyways, like regardless of how many votes you got. Or at least that's the impression that I got. But I've never had to face green light, so I never had to do any research how well it works, or how, if it was meant well, but it never really worked. It worked at the beginning when the conditions were harsher, but then again, it was never, as far as I know, the idea was always that basically it's just a public vote. But then,
wasn't it?
I don't know if. The thing is, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think there's enough publishers like that. They don't care about quality at all. They care about, some game companies. That's what you call shovelware. They make 10 crappy games because they know that out of those 10, one will recoup all the investment they have put in all of the 10. And it's, all those crappy, shitty match 3 games or whatever. It's just reskinning. It's always the same mechanic, and it doesn't add any quality. But they're just hoping that one of them catches a bit of fire and recoups the investment. They don't care about like narrative or game mechanics. There's no copyright on game mechanics. You can just reskin something and say, look, I made a new game, and you're right to say so.
Wasn't they charging for the games on Greenstein Light? Like, you had to pay something to get that game? Because they was doing some, people was being charged for some of those games, or I think all of the games. I think.
I don't know.
They were, and basically the premise was that you bought this unfinished game that you can kind of toy around with, and that the money that was coming in from that was going into finishing the game and then updating it on Steam so that you eventually had a final finished product, not this half-assed piece of garbage that you paid money for. And
but isn't that early access, basically?
That was what Greenstein Light was.
Yeah, okay. But because, I mean, you still have early access.
We had Dream Steamlight.
Oh, good. Goody movie.
I mean, it's the same with early access and people complaining about it. I mean, you have positive examples like Darkest Dungeon, where you put out something that's visually very interesting, mechanic-wise, and how mechanic and narrative interweave and everything. And it was interesting when it came there as early access game, and it was even better when it came out of early access. And but it's I'd go with very worthwhile truism that 90% of everything is crap. It's difficult. I mean, quality is a lot of hard work. Yes. And I have agonized over this game that I've made so much. I mean, just getting the game to work for colorblind without actually using filters. I've agonized over the colors of those backgrounds in relation to the interactive parts, like the caterpillars and the characters. Like, is this too dark? And now, there's a software, Color Oracle, that you can use to simulate color blindness.
But can I say something about that? Thank God that you said that, because you was thinking of other people who wanted to play this game who has that problem. You didn't just make a game to be like, oh, this is just to look beautiful, so now play. You actually thought about, there's people who are colorblind, who might actually who might want to play this game, but because that colorblind portion is I don't want to say hindrance or disability, but is a problem, you thought about that. So you were. I feel like you did your best, or you probably got it to work on a color scheme that was going to make them be able to see it and enjoy it the way that it was meant to be with the colors and stuff. So at least you as a developer thought of that. You don't really hear a lot of developers think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically just to drive home the point that it's been a challenge, but it's also, I know it adds quality to the game, but
yes.
It was a lot of work, and I can sort of understand that some people I want to make money. I don't want to it's basically Pareto principle. Do 20% of the work and satisfy 80% of your customers. And I sometimes feel like I did the reverse, which is good too. I care about quality. I care about accessibility and all those things. And to be honest, the game doesn't sell very well. If you go on Steam Spy and look up She Remembered Caterpillars, the numbers are not good. And I can't tell you the exact numbers, but it's not all too far from the truth. And in that moment, you think why did I actually put so much work into this? I know I did why I did it, and we got lots of recognition, very, very high accolades, like IGF nomination, and so you know why you did it, and there are people that recognize the quality, but sometimes having money at the end of the day to feed your children, it's sometimes you still doubt if you're doing it right. And then you look at someone that just reuses assets and reskins a mechanic and ends up with a lot of money. You're like, maybe they did something right and I did something wrong.
but you know what? You could tell in games who has passion for what they put into the game compared to one who's trying to make a quick buck. Like when I look at She Remembered Caterpillars. I'm getting a little time wrong, so I do apologize. It's
always past tense.
I could see the passion that went into the game, from the story to the development, that the mechanics and stuff. From the we started off this conversation with the artwork because, like you said, you love reading, you love movies, comic books, the stuff that inspire you to do these things, to be creative. Like you got passion in this game, and you see it through your artwork. Yeah, the reward might not be as what you expected, or sometimes you think it should have been, but sometimes you could just be like, you know what, whoever created this game and this artwork is a talented artist, and I cannot wait to see future work, because I tell people like there's a game called Okami, and that animation looks beautiful, and it was done by Clover, who is now platinum. And when I seen it, I'm like, I can't wait for more work coming from these guys. So Beautiful Joe 1 and 2, it's wonderful. And then see them transition to platinum, playing Bayonetta 2 and seeing more work, Vanquish and stuff like that. It's just like, you guys are people who have a passion for what you do, and I can't wait to see what more stuff come out of it, because most people might not support it, but I am a person that's going to support it. I even do that for Way Forward. Like, I'd even do that for Way Forward, that, they're kind of a second party or independent company in a way, but their passion for video games means so much to me.
Yeah.
For the record, before we go a whole lot further, on the back of something you mentioned, I want to stop and applaud you for doing something other than just making a game to appeal to the lowest common denominator, because there's enough of that crap out there.
Yes.
I want to see more like you that actually have a vision and want to make a game that has some depth, has some meaning, and, may not appeal to everybody, but for those that it does, it means that much more to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Atlas effect. Because when Atlas first started, all their games were niche. Like, wasn't nobody playing Persona or Shin Megami Tensei? It didn't take to Persona 3 for that, for Atlas to get recognized. Yeah. But see, Atlas continued to put out games and people were buying them to the point where if you don't get an Atlas game at the day of launch, like if Best Buy only have 2 copies, if you don't get it now, you won't get it at all.
Yeah. I mean that's if you can do that, if you can work with like scarcity in that way, that's great. I mean, I think the time for physical scarcity for games, it's pretty much over. If you're doing that, it's almost like an art project in itself, and most people will be like, why? And I think if you would do something like that nowadays, you'd have to put a lot of thought into it. Why do you choose to do it that way? And then even make it appealing instead of like it's just a gimmick, because that's what it will look like most of the time. And but it's great if you maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if you were in the position to do something like that, and then nowadays have something where you don't have to do it anymore, but you've just basically that way established a fan base because of scarcity. It's a nice thing. I mean, that's why nowadays you have merchandise that's limited runs. We've done the same. And we haven't been successful with it, but I made Metal, a lapel pin for PAX East 2016.
Ooh.
And I still have most of them because I'm not a salesperson, and I'm, especially with a lot of people around me, like a convention floor, I'm a bit shy. I don't like to like walk up to that person next to me like, hey, you're wearing a lot of label pins. Would you like to buy mine? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to talk to
a lapel pin from you. You tell me right now what I need to pay you so I can like PayPal it to you and have you send me one of those.
I really haven't figured out the right price point. But the thing is, here's the thing. What I will do is, like, it's my plan because I still have so many of them. I will put up on our itch.io page with She Remembered Caterpillars. There will be basically kind of like what Kickstarter does, like rewards, but they'll be just supporter packages where you can buy a pin or buy a pin and a T-shirt and something like that. And I'll probably put it up, I don't know, this year or something. It depends on how well the game does and what else I have to look for in order to earn some money, because that's not like the nicest thing right now, like having to look for a job because the game doesn't sell, but it's okay. I mean, I expected that to happen. But I want to do merchandise because the game kind of offers itself for it with the characters and everything.
And it helps.
So
I think it helps people
keep an eye out.
Yeah, I think it helps people notice what the game is. Like, you're expanding the marketing so people can understand, like, oh, this is a pen. I'm like, I wonder where it comes from. Oh, it comes from a video game? Oh, it looks like this. You could do this. Oh, this artwork, this story is interesting. You know what? Where can I find it at? Oh, it's on Steam. Let me download it. Be like, yeah, that's cool. So, like, the marketing can expand and it can help.
Yeah, we have some ideas concerning the marketing. We want to expand a bit on the story and the universe of the game. Possibly, maybe create a comic book relating to it. But it's all mostly ideas and not all too many sketches yet.
Well, that brings me to kind of the last question that I had that I wanted to touch with you. What are the future plans for you, for She Remembered Caterpillars? Does this, eventually see the light of day on other platforms like mobile or XBLA or PSN or the Switch? Or, is the next focus? Do we see some DLC with some new puzzles, or is it a whole new game, a whole new project altogether? Which I just had a totally random thought go through my head, given this is a game about this medicine trying to go in and combat this disease, and it's she remembered caterpillars. I'm sitting here thinking of a DLC campaign where you can play as the disease trying to fight the medicine, and it's called Remembered Cannibals.
Yeah, that kind of reskin the game. Well, plans are we're definitely going to release it on for tablets like iOS and possibly Android. But we're working on a mobile version currently.
Oh, nice.
And because the controls are so simple, it lends it very, very well to any touch-based device. It will be. I think it won't be very enjoyable on a phone because most phones screens are too small.
Yeah.
It may something like iPhone Plus might work, but I'm not sure. It's not. I don't think that it would be very enjoyable. But anything bigger than an iPad Mini works. We test that, and basically even the size of the characters in relation to the backgrounds, it's already. We kind of thought ahead there that it would, and tested it that it would potentially work on tablets after a certain size, and that's going to happen. Consoles, probably not very soon. The game has a very idiosyncratic hex grid as a base, and it feels weird playing it with a controller. It doesn't feel very natural. And
you said that but it's built on the Unity engine, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
We could, it's not so much a question of where we can release it. It's mostly like a question of where does it make the most sense.
Switch.
So
yes, like Switch, because it has because it has a tablet kind of design. So if you guys are going mobile, it still have that design, and the system is touch based. So you can still like use your fingers and stuff. So trust me, I think you would probably get more recognition on Switch, with the hype and everything. And let's just say it comes maybe next year, later down the road and stuff. And if Nintendo allowed you guys to do a demo level for you to try on the eShop and stuff like that, I think a lot of people will be interested in trying it and be like, okay, stuff works on here. And, maybe you might have to charge $14.99, like $3 more and stuff, because of it being on the Switch and stuff. I think people will be interested. I would play it on Switch.
I would like to try it for the Switch. When I heard that it's going to have, a touch-based screen, when basically the first announcement trailer came out, I was like, oh, this is really interesting.
Oh my goodness, multiplayer. She remembers caterpillars. DLC.
Yeah, well, we had some ideas, but we're probably not going to put out DLC anytime soon because developing mechanics that felt meaningful for us, or especially meaningful to David, was already a lot of work. And he's like, he said we still have some ideas for what might work. For example, we sometimes talked about a cable where you could something like you can remove the color from a character, and then the cable or the hose carries the color of that character to a bridge and then recolors the bridge. But it gets increasingly complicated to make meaningful levels that are actually a challenge and are enjoyable to play. And that's why why we said like, well, let's maybe not do DLC.
Mm-hmm.
Just merchandise and other platforms, and then work on something new, and maybe we will do it, but it's not like our main focus at the moment.
Have you checked out the game The Blob?
No, I'm not sure.
If I don't know if anyone has a Wii. I don't know if it's even available on Mac or PC. But if you have YouTube and it's available to check out The Blob, because the Blob and The Blob 2 deals with color, and you have to kind of mix colors, get it to one color to paint sections. It's kind of like almost a puzzle platform. But your both games, She Remembered Caterpillars and The Blob, are kind of separate. You guys have the same idea that deals with colors, but the execution is different.
Yeah.
So I think you should check out The Blob. Just watch a little bit of it, playthrough or something, and you might be like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of cool." Because it's one of my favorite games. I normally talk about color in games in March because of spring and stuff, and I think She Remembered Caterpillars is definitely going to get a mention. Like I think it's going to get a discussion, I should say, definitely in March.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole puzzle design thing, that's very much David's part.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like I explicitly trust him with the puzzle design. Like we basically set up the game in a way where he sets up the puzzle and then sends me the whole level in terms of how it will be set up as a puzzle, and then I paint the backgrounds to that. Oh. And I tested the levels, but for me it was always like both of us were very focused on the jobs that we chose, basically. Yes. Because I would just painting the backgrounds was so much work that it was very good to have someone that we can say like, okay, I trust you with the code and the puzzles and all that, so I don't have to think about it, because I have these big other tasks, the backgrounds and everything, that it would be too much work to do all that at once.
Okay.
So if I have the impression, or if we get the impression that there's a lot of demand for a DLC, we will definitely think about it. But if people enjoy the game as a whole and in the way the narrative is set up, and there's not that much demand, we will say like, okay, this is what it is. It is that project, and we are definitely not above about giving fans something when they ask for it. If we had people early on, they were like, can I have a background for my computer as a background screen? And it's like, well, yeah, sure. Here's a screenshot in the highest resolution I can give. I could basically render the whole game at 8K resolution if I wanted to. It would make the game unplayably huge.
Yeah.
But it would work, But if someone had a very high resolution screen and wanted the background, I could provide. Like, we might make, some kind of print. We could order a print that you can frame and put up in your living room, things like that. It's a bit easier, and it's basically just recycling the game in terms of merchandise. That's easier than expanding the game. It's a lot of work, and game development at that point is like everything you add is still game development, and it's a lot of work, a lot of going back and forth, and then sometimes just doing merchandise is very nice. It's a bit easier, feels like.
So, is there anything kind of end note that you want to put out there that we haven't touched on yet?
No, not really. But you asked also about like possible future projects, and we don't know. There was a certain time during development where me and David met every week, and we sat down in the kitchen for breakfast and talked about possible ideas. And I have ideas, and he has ideas, and we're not sure which of these are good ones, because sometimes, you can have a lot of good ideas, but you have to stick with one and then see it through to the end. And that sort of what happened. That's what happened with She Remembered Caterpillars. We stuck to that idea, and it's like, I want to make this. I want to finish this as a game, and then we went through all the hard work of doing that. Now we're unsure what to do next. We have, as I said, we have ideas. I don't know. It depends also a lot like how well the game does. If it does well on mobile and earns enough so that we can work full-time on something new, it'll be great. But if the game doesn't sell well, we'll have to look for other opportunities, and that usually means maybe no new game from us too at all.
Oh no.
I mean, in terms of Jumpsuit Entertainment, David might go on a, his career is just beginning. It's his first game ever, or his first published game ever. And it's my second game, but I'm already a bit older than David. So, but I might work for someone else and make a cool game and maybe get to see something about how the game will be presented and everything.
Well,
we'll see.
May I ask you, it's one of the odd questions. What's your favorite cereal to eat? Or
my favorite cereal in terms of something because that's a long time ago that I ate something like a branded cereal. I love cereal, or the German Swiss muesli thing. I like oatmeal.
Really?
Oatmeal is cool. Yeah, oatmeal or porridge, but more the sweet variation. I like to make porridge myself with fennel seeds and anise seed and cardamom, and ground it fresh, the spices, and with ginger, and cook it up a bit, and then add the oatmeal. It's really great, and some fresh fruit on top, maybe rice milk instead of normal milk. I can really recommend that. There you go, recipe.
A couple of years, I think like 2008, I actually came to Germany, and I don't know what part I was in, but it reminded me of California for some unknown reason. I'm like, there's some beautiful parts in Germany.
Yeah, there are indeed. It's very, very different depending on where you are.
So, Daniel, I've got one last question, and before I ask this, I have to set this up because we are not a video podcast. This is audio only. So, to the 3 people listening, yes, I'll forever make that joke. I don't care if we finally get 4. But Daniel's Skype picture has him wearing this phenomenal hat that's just this fluffy, fuzzy white thing with like a black visor surrounded in a green frame, and it looks ridiculously awesome. And my last question is, where on God's green earth can I get that hat? That's fucking fantastic.
It's something I found in my wife's closet. She has a lot of things from her grandmother. It's basically just a fur hat for women. And the whole story is I just pulled it way over my head so I couldn't see anything. And then I have the visor is basically sunglasses, like toy sunglasses, and I put them where roughly my eyes would be. and I made a selfie without knowing where actually my face is, sort of. And I tried multiple times until I got a picture that was satisfying. It's like what you see there is like I'm literally blind. I don't know what I'm doing there. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but I couldn't see it.
That hat is 100% satisfying.
Yes, like this picture rocks. Like it's so fantastic. I kept looking at it, just like, oh my goodness, that hat is so Daft Punk in a way, but it's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, I was techno DJ for a while. So maybe
Wait, what? Wait, what? Okay, because there's a place called Chicago here in America, in Illinois, and we're known for house music. So deep house, ghetto house, like different kind of house music. And when you mentioned techno music, like all through the 90s going up through high school, house music was my thing. And it still is my thing. And so, like when you said that, it just makes me happy. Like I'm so excited. Yay. I'm like, I got a person who loves art, who appreciates art, and is a phenomenal artist. And he's a techno DJ. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was during university time. We had it was basically a DJ team. It was 3 of us, and we had our group, or our team was called Woman with Muscles. Or, I mean, in German, it was Frau mit Muskeln, and we had like the wildest house and techno parties at art school. It's like, I don't know, it was great.
Have you seen Res, or have you heard of Res?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, I think you would like Res. Not so much probably playing it, but like seeing it, or what's the Luminaries? Luminaries. Like games like that. From I forgot his name. I want to say Miyazaki, but like the person who made Res. He's into like heavy, like putting music into his games. And so he has that technical DJ house kind of vibe to him. And he's always made his games about the music and then put everything else about it. And he has fantastic music.
Chime is one to check out too.
Yeah.
Which one?
I mean, which one?
Chime.
Chime, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not so much into music games for some reason. I mean, I feel like it's a very difficult genre I mean, it's hugely popular with Rock Band and everything, but it feels difficult for me to do, if I'm thinking about like music games in terms of making, if I potentially made one myself, I always feel like it becomes so repetitive. Like, I love music and but I end up turning off the music in games quite a lot because it becomes so annoying. Like, especially if it's algorithm driven, or like, well, you're playing, let's say you're playing in a first-person shooter, and there's a bunch of enemies coming up, and then suddenly the music changes to tell you that there's a bunch of enemies coming up. It's, it's basically just a sound effect, kind of like interface design on aural level. And it gets so boring because the music is always the same, and you're like, I know there's a lot of enemies coming up. You don't have to tell it with the music, and then as soon as you shot the last guy, the music goes back to da, 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 everything's nice, and you're like, okay, this is stupid.
Well, I think with Res is that the music affects the gameplay, but in a sense that you're able to look if you're a person, like, you can appreciate the visuals and the music. So it does two different things, but it uses each other in a good way, as a good mechanic. So I mean, I understand what you're talking about, playing like first person shooter, but Res is like something. It's like very different about that.
It's something different. That's true.
And even if you don't see a video or play it, I think you might enjoy the music if you're still. I don't know if you're still into techno or anything like that, or it'll make you remember the old days when you was DJing house music and stuff or techno.
I still listen to a lot of electronic music, actually.
Yeah, and I think you could probably appreciate it because I keep telling people Streets of Rage 2 has still to this very day one of the best techno style soundtracks of video games.
Yeah. I need to. I know about it, but with like having a family and game development full time, at least the last few years, I haven't had time to play games very much. It was just like.
And you know what? That's completely understandable. Just go on YouTube. If you're able to go on YouTube and listen to it and watch it, that's good enough.
Yeah, it is. That's true. I thought about Thumper. That was, I think, a recent music game, sort of.
Which one?
Thumper.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a very different sort of music. I mean, it's more industrial and more threatening, but there's a very very music-based approach to it in terms of what you have to do relating to mechanic and sound. So, and just came to my mind that that's maybe also an interesting game in terms of that.
Well, just to kind of wrap here, Daniel, anything you want to pimp? Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter most of the time, Daniel Goffin. But you can find me on Facebook. You just have to add art at the end, Daniel Goffin Art. Basically, just use my name as a search term, and you might be able to find me. Pretty much.
and you guys can find She Remembered Caterpillars on Steam for $12.99, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
So guys, do go out and support the game. It's beautiful artwork. It's about 48 levels, I think, like 8 worlds. Not 48, like 8 worlds
40.
or 8 acts. Oh, 40 levels.
It's exactly 40 levels.
Okay, 40 levels. So, I mean, it's a pretty long game. I mean, you'll have to think about it, but you'll feel good solving the puzzles. It tells a wonderful story. You guys should definitely go check it out. Support the guys at Jumpsuit Entertainment there. Daniel and his team, they made a wonderful, wonderful game.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. Really enjoyed it.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you back in future ventures.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the future as well.
Well, you guys can find World 11 Podcast on shoutengine.com, SHOUTENGINE.com. You can email the show at world11podcast@gmail.com. You can find me, Eddie V, on Twitter at That Retro Code. You also can find my other podcast, Optional Opinion, on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play. You can find this podcast, like I said, on shoutengine.com. We are now on iTunes, so just look up World 11 Podcast. And you can follow us on Twitter at World1 _1 podcast. Larry, anything else that I forget?
No, I think you hit it all. The only thing is, if you like the show and we appreciate it if you throw us a review on iTunes, be it just a nice little star review or want to write something in. All that's appreciated. Helps us get noticed and helps us grow a little more.
Join us on the Facebook page also at World 11 Podcast Forum, I believe.
Like the Facebook page if you want the content in your feed. Join the conversation in the forum, all that fun stuff. Keep your eyes peeled to the Facebook page where any good stuff, any news comes about. We put it out there and share it with you. That's it. That's the show, boys and girls.
And Daniel, can you end our show by saying something German like "Thanks for listening to World 11 Podcast"? Can you say that like in German?
Sure. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören von World 11 Podcast.
We're international, fools.
And with that, everybody, we will check you out next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. 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 Good night.